Robert.
John's holding his thumb up as if the people listening on radio are listening to the podcast.
No, I do a couple of things special for the visual medium because, you know, we used to be on television a lot. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, but the whole premise was we ignored television. Well, I did in any event. Ignore the cameras, do your radio show, and the fact that they're covering it, it's the kid sneaking the look over the outfield fence at Ebbets Field in the 1950s.
You're telling me this. I mean, last I checked, your little show was not the first radio show on television in our country. So let's get that straight, okay?
It was the first and really only radio show of any significance to be on television.
Wrong.
Go ahead, tell me.
Wrong. Leafs TV did 2 hours Monday to Friday, noon to 2.
Of what?
Leafs lunch every day. It was fantastic. It was great television.
You're going to tell me that Leafs lunch was a bigger, better show than primetime sports?
No, I'm saying it was first, and all you did and your buddy Millman did was copy. It was copy. You know, imitation, the greatest form of flattery. Thank you very much.
I got news for you. Before you did it, MSNBC did it with Don Imus. So don't tell me how you invented it.
I was talking about in this country.
No, you weren't.
I wasn't talking about that.
But you're backtracking now. That's all.
No, I'm not.
That's exactly what you're doing.
So now you're trying to tell me you're Don Imus?
No, but I sat and watched Don Imus when I was living in Las Vegas and brought that concept back to the fan. So,
well, good. It's good to be. I'm glad you came and you were second. It's good.
I don't mind being second.
Well, you were.
As long as at the end you're number one. We'll discuss.
How did that work
out? For 31 years, pretty good. And I managed to drag your sorry ass into this business as well. Instead of being a behind-the-scenes manipulator. Geppetto. The Geppetto of the television industry. Coming up, one of our friends. I'm going to get a chance to meet him face to face for the first time. He was on the radio program many times. From Sports Business Journal, John Ourand will join us, and we'll commence to talking to him about the Masters, sports media in general, the NHL deal, the NFL deal, baseball antitrust in the news again. All that coming up after these messages. There are never a shortage of topics to discuss when it comes to sports and media and deals and who's doing what with whom and to whom off of the playing field. And nobody better to talk to than John Ourand of Sports Business Journal. Good to take time for us. Nice to see you. I guess off the top, the most recent development or intrigue, I suppose, the ratings for the Masters this year. I gather were not what they would have hoped or expected. Is that accurate?
Certainly not what they would have hoped. I think with a non-English speaking foreign player running away with it, that didn't help the TV ratings in the States. It wasn't particularly competitive. But if I'm golf, I'm viewing that as an anomaly. I think that take a look at the ratings for golf tournaments throughout the spring on Golf Channel, on CBS and NBC. They're up substantially. I think golf right now is sitting in a really good place with really good young golfers that viewers, you know, nobody's going to replace Tiger, but they have a nice young roster that's there. And what happened during the Masters, I feel I don't want to make a prediction, but it looks to be an anomaly. I mean, we'll keep our eyes on it to see if it continues cascading downwards through the season. But so far, early signs are pretty good.
Foreign player leading the tournament. You might expect that, although many foreign
leading by a lot, Bob. Leading by a lot.
Foreign players have won this tournament in the past, and Spieth was in contention going into the final round. I wonder if it just fell off when the lead got to be 6 shots and people just kind of clicked off. Maybe that's what happened, huh?
I think that was part of it, but I think that this is a different foreign player than other Europeans that have come in. This is somebody that needs a translator. Like he's somebody that's unable to connect with the U.S. fan base or English-speaking fan base, and it's hard for them. It's hard to have ratings go up in that sort of scenario. I think.
Sure.
It would be a little frustrating too for the people at CBS and ESPN and the Masters Group too, because they invested so much more in technology this year. When you think of, let's face it, I don't think we've seen better pictures ever from Augusta than we saw for those 4 days.
Can you imagine Augusta National allowing drones to? I'm really curious to see when they have a full gallery there, what they're going to do with the drones, because they sort of had free reign over the course. And the Masters is, it's so old school, but it's my favorite golf tournament because you just have. I bought a big screen TV, decades ago, right? It's a big, beautiful picture. There's no like on-screen graphics that are cluttering up the screen. All you see is like beautiful azaleas, well manicured golf course. I just think it's a treat to watch.
Not only the drones, but two holes, 16 and 7, both had cable cams, something that we're used to seeing in NFL stadiums, but not necessarily on a golf course.
Well, these are the technologies that have been around for a while, but as usual, the membership at Augusta is reluctant to jump into anything too quickly.
Robert, even to the point of there's that broadcast window in the States where the CBS couldn't come on until mid-afternoon, and people that are used to watching every shot, that they're frustrated, but there was a demand of people. I think that there is a demand that waits and tunes in at the one time to say, it's almost like watching a sporting event back in the 1990s again. It's a very retro feel to it.
Well, I think we all recall when the Masters used to come on, and as you mentioned, they would only show the last either 3 or 4 holes. I can't remember if they showed 15 or not. I know they showed 16, 17, and 18, maybe 15 as well. But over the years, they've moved it back a little bit. We get a chance to see other holes, with which we are now familiar. We saw a lot of shots from the first hole, which just a few years ago, you wouldn't see any shots from there. So that evolution has been eye-opening, to be sure.
The other thing, Bob, is this was the first, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first Masters in modern times without either Frank Chirkinian or Lance Barrow involved. And when you consider that Barrow was a Chirkinian disciple, the style of coverage of golf on CBS with those two guys, and particularly at the Masters, it changed a little bit, and much more technology, as we talked about. But even the overlying, certainly we have the announcers saying the same thing, doing the same thing, but the overlying aspects of how the game was covered and how golfers was covered changed with the new production people, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They brought in that one camera that Fox pioneered that focuses on one player and everything else gets blurred. So it almost is like you're watching a video game. It's like an 8K picture and a regular HD. And like you said, with the cable cam, with the drones, I mean, there was so much more tech. You don't ever associate the Masters with technology, but it did have that a much different feel than it has in the past several decades. I'm not sure.
What we've seen too from, sorry, John, what we've seen too from TSN here in Canada, who have carried it for several years. We saw once again multi-channels of sections of the golf course from literally 10 a.m. or so. So if you were interested in guys that were teeing off early in the early days, early rounds of the tournament, that would be applicable. You got a chance to see them play virtually every hole, and just by clicking around.
Yeah, and Robert, we're 3 old guys, so we're of course focused on TV, but you could go online and watch every shot just about. I mean, they did make that available, which again, for Augusta National is a pretty big step to take.
Are you inclined to do that? Do you, because of your job or because of your level of interest and sophistication in technology, Did you
I
go
am
online?
I love watching golf majors and big golf events. I'm not the type of rabid fan that would go and seek it out via streaming. I was content enough to wait for the big screen to watch it there.
We want to talk about the NHL deal, which is partly done, the NFL deal, et cetera, an antitrust movement in baseball. But in general, what we have seen is a dramatic reduction in sports media across North America. A lot of it, well, let me ask you, the assumption at the beginning when we saw people being laid off and not replaced was that this was all COVID related. And, I guess it's fair to say there was an assumption that when the pandemic passed, people would be rehired, things would go back to normal. I'm not sure that's going to happen. How do you feel about it?
No, it's definitely not going to happen. I think that we have big media companies that are focused on their bottom line that have figured out how to produce events and games in a cheaper way than in the past. And so a lot of the people that have been let go, those jobs aren't there for them anymore. They figured out, Fox at the very beginning of the pandemic figured out how to do a NASCAR race with nobody actually at the race. Like they had a couple of camera operators at the race, but they were doing it from LA, they were doing it from Charlotte, they were using the entire country to put up, do the replays, put up the graphics, have the announcers, and they realized they can do it for sort of run-of-the-mill events. I think that you have big time events. Super Bowl is always going to have people there. I think the Stanley Cup Finals are always going to have people there. But let's say a February college basketball game between Temple and South Carolina, they're going to do that from Bristol. They're not going to send people to stay in the Four Seasons and build up an expense account, and they figured out how to do it much cheaper. And before I ramble too much, one thing about the pandemic in every aspect of it is that there were trends that were happening before the pandemic that during the pandemic they just accelerated, and I think that's totally what we're seeing right now with sports TV production.
Were there actually broadcasters that were not going to events before the pandemic?
For very small games, yeah, they were doing that. But now that line for what's a small game is going up a lot more. So I referenced a college basketball game between two sort of mid-major schools. What if it is a January game between two ACC schools, that are sort of mid-table? What if it's an NBA game that's way out west and ESPN doesn't want to send everybody there? Like, can they announce it from Bristol? Those are decisions that they're going to make.
Well, we're seeing that on cable TV in both countries, at the professional level too, when you consider that most NHL teams and NBA teams aren't traveling their local announcers to games. If the Wizards go to New Orleans, the Wizards announcers for the most part are still in Washington.
And how the media companies are viewing that, John, is I'm a Wizards fan, so thank you for bringing that up. So I notice that the announcers are just calling what I'm actually seeing. They're not doing anything more than that. It's not as good of an experience for me as a viewer, but I'm a fan and I'm tuning in anyway. So they got me, right? And so
so that leads me to the question: is at what point does the viewer push back, or will they push back? Are there enough people that can discern the difference? And my personal answer is I don't think there are enough people that can find the difference. I think that there are most people, 80 to 90% will say, well, it's good enough for me.
John, I'm going to answer that. What do I think and what do I hope? I hope people
both
discern the difference. But yeah, I got to agree with you, right?
Well, and I'll tell you the sports, because I've noticed this kind of stuff too. The small arena sports, hockey, basketball, for example, what announcers are looking at on the screen, which is what we're looking at on a screen, pretty much is the focus of attention under any circumstance. But the bigger the scope of the field of play, it starts to become really interesting. Baseball, for example, that feel of understanding how hard a ball is hit and whether it has a chance to go out of the ballpark or not, whether the fielder is lined up or the ball's going to go into the gap. Those are things. I mean, I try and do it when I watch on television, and it's very, very difficult, almost impossible to discern. Football, too, especially color guys, being able to look outside the scope of the television camera and discern whether a receiver was open downfield or, those kinds of things. That's what you miss. And I wonder over time whether we're just becoming used to what we've been subjected to for the last 13, 14 months, or whether we're eventually going to say, hang on a second, I want you to go back and do what you did before.
Yeah, and I think that there's just sort of growing up in the business. It used to be a broadcast business, and they would have people there, and they'd spend a lot of money on production, and they would they would have questions get answered right away. So like in a basketball game, there's a technical foul, and the announcer from the studio in Bethesda, Maryland, is saying like, well, there's a technical foul. Let's wait and see what it is, because they know as much as we know.
Exactly.
And so I need that question answered as a viewer, and I need it answered rather quickly. And I want them to tell me, as opposed to us sort of finding out together almost.
There's a lot of suits. Hey, hold on, Bob. There's a lot of suits though, sitting in offices saying, what America and Canada are doing is they're just replicating now what the rest of the world has done for years, because with multiple languages, the European Broadcast Union in 44 countries has called every sport off tube for years. I mean, when you look at Olympics, that's the life at the Olympics for a lot of countries. And now it's becoming that way in Canada and the United States as well. So in many ways, from a technology perspective, we've been behind a lot of these people at the same time. And basketball, to me, is the best example, because if your courtside is two announcers, and you can hear the coach walk by, and you can hear the diatribe that he gives to the referees before he gets the technical, then that's worth having those two guys there and explain what happens. But there's a lot of people that are saying, well, you know what, Canada, United States, you're joining the rest of the world now, so get used to it.
Yeah, John, it's funny. I remember distinctly 2008 when Dick Ebersol was running NBC, and the Olympics were in Beijing, and they spent so much to make that. That was one of the biggest productions I've ever seen. They spent so much on sets in Beijing. They took a ton of people in Beijing. Well, I didn't go to the Olympics. I stayed in the States, and one of the days I went up to 30 Rock, and on the Saturday Night Studio set, they had little phone booths set up, probably about 20 of them, and they had announcers in each of them calling games remotely. I mean, so even sort of these big old broadcast veterans that understand having people at on site matters. Even then, it was a cost-conscious decision, and it was worthwhile to do that. So certainly now that they're counting beans a lot more regularly. I mean, in the States, we have cord cutting. ESPN is losing subscribers, and nobody knows when that's going to end. All the other networks are facing the same sort of thing. They're looking to cut costs wherever they can, and that's a really easy way to do it.
One of the first things that we noticed with this pandemic was, and people not traveling, media not traveling, was the remote Zoom interview. And we've kind of quickly become, I guess, used to that to some extent. And John and I have opined about whether, the face-to-face post-game thing will come back. Do you think it will? Do you think the media in general, if play-by-play people don't go to the arenas anymore, will the print media, will others, and will we see news conferences with people actually sitting in seats in front of a podium?
I feel like I don't know if we're going to see news conferences with people in seats in front of a podium, but I do feel like that aspect is going to come back. I feel like the leagues want that to come back because media turns into a marketing arm for them. And I think that, most reporters that I know don't get their stories from those big press conferences where you ask a question and then everybody knows what your story angle is, and you give it up, and you want to buttonhole the guy in the corner of the locker room and just talk or just learn. And so I think that aspect of it happens. But yeah, I'm in print media. We've been going through this for a long time. Is it worth to go on a West Coast road swing? I mean, can we pass that up and sort of watch the television, the game on television, and report off that, or get AP to cover it?
I can tell you right now, the players enjoy having no media in their locker rooms and dressing rooms. And I think that there's going to be, I really do think that it's going to be it may be quiet, but there's going to be pushback from the athletes to say, hey, if we can just keep this up, this is really nice. Mm-hmm. This is much more enjoyable for me to do my job, because they don't really understand that, the media, reporters of every level are part of the marketing of the game. They just don't like to get interviewed.
Yeah, and that's a fascinating difference of just sports now, is that it used to be before my time even, where they would use the media to sort of get their name out there, and they don't need that anymore. They have social accounts. They have the Players Tribune that they have a lot. They can really manage their own messages much more effectively than giving it to a media member and praying that media member treats them in the way that they want to be treated.
More to discuss. The NHL deal, it's partly done in the U.S. The NFL deal, some changes there, and the notion of baseball losing its antitrust exemption. We've heard this story before, but it has resurfaced. We'll address all those things when we return with John Ourand of Sports Business Journal after these messages. Bob McCown, John Shannon, and John Ourand of Sports Business Journal. NHL deal in the U.S., well, here in Canada, it's done for how many more years? What's Sportsnet got left?
I think six more. It was a 12-year deal, Bob.
I remember it was a 12-year deal, John, and I remember it was $5.2 billion. And
5.2 billion Canadian dollars, not American dollars, Canadian dollars. Big difference.
Well, that's what I earn. I spend here, so I don't know what the relevance of that exactly is. And I do remember that day very, very well. So they have a new deal in the U.S., and a big chunk of it is with Disney, but not a lot with ESPN. I think John reminded me just before you came on that. What do you think, John? Only about 25 games?
I don't think there's I think that there's been a real shift, and you correct me if I'm wrong, John, a real shift to that cord cutting world, and ESPN and ABC not having many regular season games, maybe even just one a week for the regular season before we get to the playoffs. And a lot of this is dedicated to helping Hulu and other online, and ESPN Plus and other online issues, correct?
There are two ways at looking at this, and one is certainly that aspect. ESPN and ABC have a 25-game regular season package, and the brutal honesty is regular season NHL games don't rate. They're not considered to be valuable for TV networks. The reason that ESPN paid as much money as it paid was for the playoffs and the Stanley Cup, which rate pretty well, and for the getting the streaming package. So that 25 is sort of Gary Bettman wanting to make sure that he has a regular season package that is available to a mass audience, which is what TV provides. That said, my takeaway, and I know we're going to talk about the NFL in a bit, but my takeaway with both the NFL and the NHL deals is, especially coming from the discussion we just had on remote production and the business of sports media is cost cutting right now. These are such big bets on linear television, and I'm not sure if I find it surprising, but I just find it to be a statement. I think the last NHL deal that they did with NBC, I'm pretty certain everybody was talking about, like, well, let's see the next time that the rights come up, you know, Amazon or Google or Facebook or you name the digital company was going to come in, swoop in, and take a significant part of the rights, and that didn't happen. That you're going to be able to watch for the next 7 years all of the playoffs and all of the Stanley Cup Finals on television in the United States, and I think that's somewhat significant. At the same time, what I think ESPN did that was smart, and the NHL too, is they have a really significant streaming presence on ESPN Plus and on Hulu. And you know, for ESPN, for the media companies, the NHL fan bases are considered to be rabid fan bases, and so if they're the really cool part of this deal to me is the deal that puts a significant number of games, I forget off the top of my head, on Hulu and on ESPN Plus that are going to be.
I think it's 100.
Yeah, and they're going to be exclusive. So if I want to watch Alexander Ovechkin in my hometown on a couple of days, he's going to be on Hulu and ESPN Plus. And if I'm a rabid Caps fan, and there are a lot of them down here, they're going to subscribe, and you're going to see numbers go up. So they're less dependent on traditional ratings than they are sort of having content that draws subscribers in to watch it. So that's a really cool deal that I suspect is going to really help the subscriber numbers on ESPN Plus and Hulu in the same way that UFC has helped those numbers, and they have a lot of deals with college conferences as well.
20 years ago, maybe more, we were having debates about the merits of pay-per-view and of sports programming, and about the only thing that really worked, correct me if I'm wrong, were big-time boxing events. There wasn't a whole lot else that worked as a pay-per-view function. And now what these networks have done, it would seem, is turned it into it's still pay-per-view essentially, but you have to subscribe to a service, a specific service, in order to watch what you want to watch. They tried it by putting games, I mean, on the NHL, Western Canada, even when you were running Leafs TV, John, Shannon, did you do exclusive games from time to time?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we did. In fact, the last 2 years over there, we had a 15 to 20 game package. But I mean, in the end, isn't cable TV pay-per-view? I mean, it's all semantics in the end. Come on now.
Yes. Well, okay, but I'll buy that.
I mean, big event is big event. $99 to watch boxing or to watch WrestleMania. That's at a different level.
Well, I'll give you that.
Worldwide. That's worldwide, but that's, you know, for the territory of Canada, the United States, and sports distribution. That's why cable TV and then these streaming packages are making a difference in these two countries. Well,
but if I'm in the US and I'm paying for ESPN and essentially paying for Fox, and I don't get, and I mean, I get my my traditional 4 big networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, and I guess Fox. Now I'm being asked to buy at least one other service that I may have had no interest in just to get 1 or 2 games. I just wonder, tell me about that evolution, Mr. Ourand. You know, does it seem logical to you, and will it work?
I think you're both right. How's that for splitting the difference there? Right now, you have if you're a big soccer fan and you just want to watch soccer, you're going to have to subscribe to Paramount Plus. You're going to have to subscribe to Peacock. You're going to have to subscribe to ESPN Plus, and you're going to have a cable subscription as well. And I'm sure there are other ones that are out there. Mm-hmm. Every media analyst I talk to and media executive I talk to believes that there is going to eventually be some sort of merger, or some of these services aren't necessarily going to work, or you're going to end up with a bundle, like almost like the cable bundle that happened there. But I think that what the NHL did that I think was really smart is that I referenced the games on Hulu. If I'm a rabid hockey fan, I'm going to find those games. If I'm not a rabid fan, I'm not going to find those games. You're only catering to your hardcore fan base on streaming right now. And so these deals that put it on, I guess cable's pay-per-view, but you get a lot of casual fans that sample your product on cable. You get even more casual fans that sample your product on broadcast television. And so I think sort of having them go a little bit both ways, it works. And I think there's also a point of, you don't have to see, it's only recent history, relatively speaking, that you can see every single game. I mean, it's not necessarily a birthright to see every single game. So if you don't want to get that added package, you don't have to.
You are old if you're seeing that, John. If you're so
listen on the radio, AM radio, John.
Yeah, that's so now. Before we talk about the NFL, because I think you just tweaked me to something else. Fox, the regional Fox sports networks in the United States sold to Sinclair. Sinclair sold the naming rights to Bally. We saw the unveiling of Bally Sports 2 weeks ago. But this is now the latest. Forget about pay-per-view. Forget about streaming. What we're doing is we're marrying cable TV on a regional basis to sports gambling. That's the next step, isn't it? Really?
Yes, 100% yes. That's the next step in terms of media companies and leagues and teams looking for new revenue streams and seeing this seemingly limitless revenue potential of sports gambling, which is out there. I have a lot of doubt about. There's going to be a shakeout, of course, with sports gambling, and whether or not I'm going to go and interact with and bet on whether or not Ovi scores 2 goals and has an assist in this game is like I haven't seen an application yet that would convince me to sort of bet on sports as I'm watching sports. Outside of who wins and loses and a few prop bets.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, but isn't it going to be about your phone? Isn't it be about or the second screen? You watch the game, you got your second screen.
Yeah, but either you're inclined to do that or you're not, John. I mean,
but Bob, this goes back to, but with all due respect, our age is not really where they want to go. Yeah, 19, 20 years old, 30, 35-year-old guys and females that love the risk reward, and they have credit cards. It's easy to do, and it's fun.
I'm not arguing that point. Look at what the point I want to bring up is the hypocrisy of these leagues, who for decades did everything they could under the premise that there was something evil about wagering on sporting events. And really what I said repeatedly was they're not against wagering on it. They're against the fact that they don't get a take. That was really the issue. And I've told the story before of sitting in Caesar's Palace years ago when they used to have a bunch of chairs that were in the shape of footballs. And you could book these chairs to sit in a football helmet of your favorite team to watch the game on the giant screens. It even got to the point where people were paying money to be able to sit in those helmets. And the leagues, after years of not being able to generate any revenue from sports gaming, filed an action that forced the legal sports books in Nevada to not be able to use the nicknames of the NFL teams on the board when you made a bet. And the New York Jets became the New York A's for AFC, and the New York Giants became the New York N's for NFC. They couldn't use the nicknames. They couldn't use the logos, anything else. And now they want to get into bed with them. All of a sudden, because there's money to be made, this whole philosophical gambling is evil premise has disappeared. So I just want to point out that hypocrisy before we move on.
Let me defend the leagues for a quick second, because you're generally right. But also in America, market by market, gambling has become legalized. So it's become almost less of, it used to be just in Vegas and I guess Atlantic City. And now it's in, I don't know how many states, 20 out of 50 states now. Mm-hmm. And so it's something that's almost more acceptable, you're right in what you said, but it's a different sort of marketplace and a different public viewpoint toward
Well,
it.
all I'm going to say in response to that, John, is the National Football League would have let Caesar's Palace keep the helmets if they would have paid for it.
Sure, but hey,
So-
Bob, we all want to make money. We all want to make, even you.
I'm simply pointing out a truism that this isn't all about the expansion of the brand for the sake of the fan.
No, but
It's all
Bob, the
about
expansion of
dollars
the
and
brand
cents.
is always about making money. That's what the expansion of the brand means.
Well,
Come on now.
everything in life now, it seems, is about making money.
So the NFL deal, John,
Yeah,
are we
let's get
going to
to it.
notice a difference? Are we going to notice a difference when the new deal starts? How much difference will we notice when the new deal starts in a couple of years?
It's funny. That's a really good question. Nobody's actually ever asked me that question. No, I don't think you're going to see any difference whatsoever. I think you're going to see Fox with the NFC package. You're going to see CBS with the AFC package. You're going to see NBC with Sunday Night Football and ESPN with Monday Night Football. They're going to be teeny. Look, Amazon got so many headlines, and it was a big story because it's the first time the NFL went with an all digital package.
Right.
It's a big story. It's the worst package by far. It's Thursday Night Football. It's are you going to notice that? Am I going to notice that I can't watch Thursday Night Football unless I go to Amazon? Maybe some people are. Ultimately, the way people in the States will consume NFL football in 2032 is going to look remarkably similar to the way they consume football in 2021.
Well, let me ask you something, because I operate under a certain assumption. I'm not sure if you think it's true. I would watch Thursday Night Football if my team was playing. Maybe. If my team's not playing, there's no chance. I'm not an NFL fan. I'm a fan of a particular team. And there may be 5 games in a year that are intriguing enough to me to watch. Am I normal or abnormal?
Do you play fantasy football?
No.
This actually kind of goes back into sports gambling, and I think why all the leagues are to go rapidly into sports gambling, because I will watch Thursday Night Football if it's the Jaguars versus the Jets, if I have a player on one of those teams on my fantasy team. And if you take a look at fantasy numbers, it's not, and for the NFL, it's not just hardcore fans. They're bringing in a ton of casual fans. And the main reason why NFL ratings have gone up as high as they have is that fantasy football is so much more popular than everything else. And so I think that's sort of the main thing there. And if it's your team in the States, the NFL is still heavily broadcast. If the Washington football team is playing on Amazon, I'm going to be able to see it on local television, broadcast television in my market. It's not totally exclusive. The local market still will be able to watch it via
TV. So what did Amazon really buy then?
They bought a mechanism for you to buy a jersey if you happen to like the jersey at that point, point and click.
Well, I'm an Amazon Prime guy. I get the package anyway. I get the package anyway.
And I think this is the thing that all of the leagues have discovered is the cable TV business, the entire TV business grew so big on the backs of sports because they were able to sort of charge consumers. It's a different revenue model for big tech. Like everybody, Amazon has over 100 million subscribers already for Amazon Prime. It's a completely different business model for them. And so the idea that Amazon is going to come in and take every NFL game, it doesn't need every NFL game. It just needs enough games for enough people to come in. And every single streaming service will tell you that I'm going to go to Hulu to watch the NHL game because I'm a big hardcore NHL fan. But once I'm in Hulu, I'm going to say, oh, I want to watch that. And I want to, and you end up stuck in Hulu and you end up watching different things and they nab you. And I think that's, it's not about pure volume, which is ESPN and Fox Sports 1 and, the soon to be departed NBC Sports Network. It's about, just getting a taste of it.
Right.
We got about 5 minutes or so left or less. Here's three guys who have been through a lot of years of watching things evolve. And every so often, the baseball antitrust exemption comes up. Somebody raises the issue of we should get rid of that. And nothing has happened. I really don't have an opinion on whether baseball should keep its antitrust exemption or not. Some parts of it suggest yes to me. Some parts say, well, maybe not. But it's on the table again. Is there any reason to believe that the current movement will be any different or more successful than prior ones?
My quick read on it is no, mainly because the senators that brought this up are really a polarizing trio. It's going to be very difficult for them to get bipartisan support for a punitive bill like they put forward. That being said, the idea of taking away baseball's antitrust exemption is like a liberal dream. Like the left of the left love that idea. And so the idea that now, hardened right-wing conservatives are putting it forward, could they get like a liberal wing to say like, yes, we don't like how you got there, but we do like the end result. There's a possibility there. Being somebody that lives in DC, I can't see them working together on that. And so I think it's pretty close to DOA, but it is something that has baseball executives and really all sports executives, they're not taking it lightly. They have a deep eye on this.
Yeah, I can't see Ted Cruz and AOC working together on anything. So that's one thing. But at the same time, are we ever going? Sports used to be, and sports on television used to be escapism. I guess we're beyond that now, right? Sports and politics and life will always interact now because of the different platforms.
See, I'm going to push back on you, John. I don't think it's always been about escapism. I think, Muhammad Ali was
but he was an exception, John. He was an exception.
Jim Brown at the time was doing it.
Okay.
There are a whole lot of people that are icons of sports. I think it only became, during the Michael Jordan eras, sort of, even Republicans buy sneakers type eras, where it was like, okay, let's keep a middle ground. And I think that we've seen things that LeBron James have done. It's like the NBA players have been particularly forward about doing that. They haven't been hurt in terms of sponsorship revenue and getting sponsorships. As far as I know, sponsors haven't fled at all from that. And I think that's going to embolden more and more people to do what they view as going back to like a 1960s sort of mindset.
On the baseball antitrust thing, last point, I suppose, one of the things we see regularly in Washington, which is where you are concepts, ideas in Congress where they take a perhaps controversial idea that they want passed and bury it in a bill that's as thick as the Bible. And it's not that people won't notice it, they do, but because there are things, other parts of that bill, proposed bill that they like, they go along with it. Could we see the baseball antitrust movement do that kind of thing?
Why did you vote against saving baby seals? Well, because of the baseball antitrust clause that was involved in that.
Well, but that happens every day.
It absolutely does. People that I respect think that would be a very long shot. This is something that's going to be lobbied intensely by baseball. Is a big lobbying arm here. They have deep to get that done, and they have like really respected executives down here in DC. I find it very difficult that something will be sort of slid in.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all, John. I'm just saying that they may.
I would imagine that is a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, they may try that, but you are right. We have seen this issue come up numerous times over the last 30 or 40 years, and baseball continues to survive with their antitrust exemption. And I suspect that that's not about to end. We are out of time. It has been a delight to have you on the program. Nice to meet you face to face too, as we are here after many conversations on the radio. We hope you'll give us the opportunity to bug you again down the road sometime.
Yeah,
Thank
Bob,
you.
I've talked to you many times on the radio. I've covered John. It was such a treat to see John's name pop up in my email inbox. I've covered him for like 20 years now, so it's I'm a huge fan. This has been a fun conversation. Thanks.
For us too. We thank you again and look forward to seeing you down the road. Thank you, John. Bob McCown, John Shannon, we only got a few seconds here. Our thanks to John Ourand for joining us from Sports Business Journal, and we'll have him back if he'll come back, but I'm not sure.
Did you hear what he said, though? Did you hear what he said? Followed my career for 20 years.
Yeah, well,
Pretty
clearly
good,
he's a guy with time on his hands and nothing else on his mind.
Well, I think it was good to have one of my buddies on. It's good.
Okay, well, bring another one on tomorrow. Let's see how long we can make this string last of all your buddies. That'll do it for us. Not a moment too soon before his ego explodes the screen. For John Shannon, Bob McCown. See you again tomorrow. Bye, everybody.